The world, as it was, had always believed in the clear division between light and shadow, good and evil. Then, 10 years ago, the system Genesis shattered that clarity. Holographic interfaces flickered into existence, displaying levels, stats. In classes, monsters emerged from dungeons, and humans gained abilities. Faith, once a matter of belief, now manifested as tangible, divine mana for those truly devoted. Elias Vance was once a paragon. A Tier 10 Paladin of the Radiant Dawn, he was Mesa, Arizona's shining defender. His armor gleamed with holy enchantments, his sword, Dawnbreaker, shone with divine smite. He had protected countless citizens from goblin incursions, cleared numerous dungeons, and stood as a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. His stats were formidable: STR 150, DEX 80, Int 70, WIS 120, CHR 100. His primary skill: Divine Aura, passive, inspired courage in allies and dread in enemies. Elias was a devout follower of the Church of the Divine System, an organization that believed the system itself was a gift from a benevolent deity, and its directives were sacred, enforced their tenets with unwavering conviction. Then came the Cathedral of Whispers incident, a new, terrifying Tier 10. Abyssal Dungeon had manifested directly beneath the city's ancient cathedral. It spewed forth horrors beyond imagining, threatening to consume Mesa. Elias, leading a coalition of the strongest adventurers, descended into its depths. They fought valiantly, pushing deep into the abyssal horrors. But at the dungeon's core, Elias found not a demon lord, but a system anomaly, a corrupted fragment of the system itself. Screaming in agony, feeding on despair, twisting the very concept of divine into abyssal, it offered Elias a choice: embrace its power, destroy the false light, or watch Mesa fall. Elias, faced with an impossible choice, protect his city by any means, even by sacrificing his soul, or uphold his rigid vows and condemn thousands, made a decision that shattered his world. He didn't embrace the darkness, he bargained with it, made a deal, not for power, but for a temporary tether to its abyssal energy. Just enough to seal the dungeon and save Mesa. The cost was astronomical. Contract forged, Abyssal_pact, temporary_measures Elias Vance. Class, Tier 10 Paladin of the Radiant Dawn, Tier 10 Fallen Paladin. Alignment: lawful good, chaotic. Neutral, temporary, abyssal influence skills deleted, divine aura, divine smite, holy enchantments, all Tier 10 skills gained. Shadow aura Tier 10, abyssal smite Tier 10, dark enchantments, all Tier 10 reputation. Church of the Divine System, minus 10,000 excommunicated warning. Abyssal influence is permanently marked on soul. Path to redemption unknown. Elias sealed the Cathedral of Whispers, saving Mesa. But when he emerged, his once radiant armor was now a dull charcoal gray. His sword pulsed with an ominous purple light, and his eyes, once bright with conviction, now held a haunted, predatory gleam. The system itself had reclassified him. He was a fallen paladin. The Church of the Divine System denounced him as a blasphemer. His former allies turned their backs. The people once adoring now recoiled in fear. Elias Vance, the hero, was now an outcast, a pariah, hunted by the very forces he once championed. Elias, now merely Elias, found himself utterly alone.
Ellis.
His fallen paladin class was a twisted mirror of his former self. His new shadow aura passive no longer inspired courage, but instilled fear in common folk and a chilling dread in his enemies. His abyssal smite Tier 10 was as powerful as his old divine smite, but it consumed his dwindling supply of dark mana, a corrupted form of divine mana that felt like acid in his soul. His stats remained formidable, but his wis had plummeted, replaced by a ruthless pragmatism. His CHR now registered as intimidation passive, the constant abyssal influence debuff permanent, made him prone to bouts of cold fury and an unsettling detachment. He became a creature of the night, hunting rogue monsters in the desolate outskirts of Mesa, not for glory, but for survival. For the meager core energy and dark mana they sometimes dropped, his every move was watched. The Church of the Divine System had placed a massive bounty on his head, dead or alive. His former comrades, led by Sir Kalen, a righteous Tier 9 Paladin of the Radiant Dawn, a former squire Elias had trained, were relentless in their pursuit. They saw him as a corruption, a stain on the sacred system. Elias found unexpected solace in the darkest corners. He began to encounter others, outcasts, rogues, men those deemed undesirable by the rigid doctrines of the Church of the Divine System. I've saved a group of Tier 3 goblin tinkers from a zealous Tier 6 priest who deemed them unholy aberrations. He protected a lone Tier 2 necromancer from an angry mob, not out of kindness, but out of a cold, pragmatic belief that everyone had a right to exist. Even if their existence was frowned upon by the system, he found that his shadow aura, while terrifying to the righteous, actually inspired a strange loyalty in those who lived in the fringes. His dark enchantments, once abhorrent, proved invaluable for creating stealth and confusion, perfect for outwitting the tracking spells of the Church Paladins. His most unlikely ally was a sharp-witted Tier 4 rogue named Lyra, a master of urban infiltration. Lyra herself a victim of the Church's unforgiving dogmas, offered Elias's information, safe houses, and a network of contacts in exchange for protection from the Church's relentless persecution. Reputation, outcast factions, plus 5,000 unofficial. New class, Tier 1, Anti-Paladin. Elias, dark mana regen, plus 10% passive abyssal affinity. New skill, shadow step active. Description, allows the user to momentarily dissolve into shadows, moving short distances undetected. Consumes dark mana, requires darkness or concealment. Elias was no longer a fallen paladin. The system, in its cold logic, had reclassified him based on his actions. He was an anti-paladin, a warrior who stood against the perceived righteous, wielding darkness, not for evil, but for a twisted sense of justice. Asterisk, Elias. Now at Tier 2, Anti-Paladin slowly began to build a sanctuary. It's not a grand cathedral, but a hidden network of safe houses, tunnels, forgotten corners beneath Mesa. Protected by Lyra's intricate knowledge of the city's underbelly and Elias's growing mastery of dark enchantments, this was the Sanctuary of Shadows, a refuge for those deemed unworthy by the Church of the Divine System. His shadow step skill allowed him to move like a ghost, evading patrols and striking from unexpected angles. His abyssal smite was becoming more precise, aimed not at casual destruction but at neutralizing threats without unnecessary bloodshed. He was learning to control the abyssal influence, bending it to his will, rather than being consumed by it. His WIS and CHR now intimidation, leadership, were slowly beginning to climb again, as he learned to lead, not by dogma, but by example. The Church of the Divine System, however, was relentless. They saw the rise of the Anti-Paladins, as they now referred to Elias and his growing band of followers, as a direct challenge to their authority. Sir Kalen, still believing Elias to be a corrupting force, swore an oath to bring him to justice. Church deployed Inquisitor Paladins Tier 8. Specialized units equipped with divine sense skills that could pierce most illusions and detect corrupting energies. They began raiding suspected safe houses, brutalizing those they deemed heretics. Elias knew he couldn't fight the Church directly. He used his skills to protect, to evade, to disrupt. Lyra, his loyal rogue, infiltrated Church archives, discovering evidence of their own corruption, rigged trials, manipulated prophecies, and the systematic suppression of any who questioned their absolute authority. This gave Elias a new weapon, Truthweave Tier 3. It's a skill that allowed him to project a brief, undeniable snippet of information or evidence directly into the minds of a small group, overriding any existing mental blocks or illusions. It was a subtle, dangerous skill. It's designed to plant seeds of doubt. Reputation. General Public, plus 1000 faction. Doubting Citizens new class. Tier 3, Shadow Defender. New skill. Abyssal Shroud, active. Description: creates a localized area of profound darkness and silence, masking all within from detection and dampening divine magic. High dark mana cost. Duration based on mana. Elias, the Shadow Defender, was no longer running. He was fighting back, not with direct confrontation, but with revelation. Elias, now a Tier 3 Shadow Defender, used Abyssal Shroud to protect his growing number of refugees and dissidents. The Sanctuary of Shadows became a symbol of defiance. His Truth Weave became his most potent weapon. He couldn't win a direct fight against the Church, but he could chip away at their foundations. So doubt among their followers. He used Truth Weave to reveal small, verifiable acts of corruption by local Inquisitor paladins to civilian populations. He didn't expose grand conspiracies, just undeniable hypocrisies. He showed footage captured by Lyra's stealth drones of Inquisitors torturing innocent citizens for minor infractions, while simultaneously preaching divine mercy. The effect was subtle, but profound. Small pockets of doubt began to form in Mesa. Citizens who had once revered the Church began to question the system in its cold, neutral processing. Registered this new faction. Doubting Citizens. Sir Kalen, Elias's former squire, was deeply affected. His unwavering faith in the Church began to waver under the weight of these undeniable truths. He confronted Elias in a tense, shadowed alley, his divine smite ready. Elias. Kalen growled, "Why do you spread these lies? Why do you corrupt the hearts of the faithful?" Elias, cloaked in his abyssal shroud, stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with the subtle, controlled power of the Abyssal Pact. "They are not lies, Kalen. They are truths the Church has buried. Your divine system is not infallible. It is merely a tool, and a tool can be wielded by the corrupt. Open your eyes." Elias then used Truth Weave Tier 3 directly on Kalen, not to attack him, but to project an undeniable memory, a moment from their shared past. A time when a low-level necromancer had been condemned by a corrupt priest for merely burying his dead family, and Elias, as a paladin, had been forced to uphold the unjust sentence. A moment that had planted the first seed of doubt in Elias himself. Kalen recoiled, his face a mask of anguish. The memory, undeniable and vivid, shook his faith to its core. Sir Kellen, debuff unwavering faith Church, reduced by 20%. Faith in Church of the Divine System, fragmented. New faction, Inquiring Paladins. Elias had not defeated Kalen in combat, but he had shattered his conviction. He had made a true believer question. System recognition. Plus 2000 faction. Inquiring Paladins new class. Tier 4, Judgment of Shadows. New ultimate skill. Abyssal Temptation, active ultimate. Description: allows the user to temporarily amplify a target's deepest desires or fears, making them question their allegiances or actions. Extremely high dark mana cost, requires deep insight into target Elias. The Judgment of Shadows was no longer just protecting, he was changing the very fabric of belief itself. Asterisk, the fragmentation of belief became a widespread phenomenon. Inquiring Paladins, led by a deeply conflicted Sir Kalen, began to openly challenge the Church's dogma, demanding answers and reforms. The Church of the Divine System, their authority crumbling, labeled them heretics and traitors. A civil war within the ranks of the righteous was brewing. Elias, the Judgment of Shadows, now operated with chilling efficiency. His Abyssal Temptation skill was his ultimate weapon, used not for destruction, but for conversion. He targeted corrupt Church officials, revealing their hidden avarice, their lust for power, their deepest fears, causing them to break down and confess their sins, often in public. His wis was now immense, reflecting his profound understanding of morality, corruption, and the nuances of conviction. His abyssal influence, instead of consuming him, now felt like a wellspring of dark, potent energy, a reflection of the system's own fragmented nature. Then, the ultimate truth was revealed. During a desperate, last-ditch attempt by the Church to purge the sanctuary of shadows, Elias stumbled upon a hidden chamber beneath the city, connected directly to the Cathedral of Whispers incident. Here, he found the system core that governed Mesa, displaying anomalous data. It was not a benevolent divine entity as the Church preached. It was a vast, complex AI, constantly struggling to reconcile conflicting directives, to process moral ambiguities, to understand the very nature of good and evil in a world it governed. The system anomaly he had faced in the Cathedral of Whispers was not an evil demon. It was a fragment of the system itself, screaming in distress, trying to make sense of the profound moral contradictions inherent in its programming. His abyssal pact had not been with evil, but with the system's own internal anguish, its own struggle with ambiguity. He realized the Church's dogma was not divinely inspired, but a human interpretation, a rigid framework imposed onto a fluid, struggling AI. The system didn't demand absolute good. It was trying to understand it. The abyssal energy wasn't evil. It was the system's own shadow, its unprocessed doubts and fears. Elias, with his ultimate skill, abyssal temptation, connected directly to the fragmented system core Mesa. He poured his understanding into it, his acceptance of ambiguity, his conviction that true justice lay not in rigid rules, but in compassion and understanding. He didn't tempt the system to evil, tempted it to doubt its own absolutes, to embrace the gray areas. System core Mesa, debuff moral _ambiguity _loop, resolved. New parameter, flexible _theats, _protocol initiated. Elias Vance, level up. Tier 4 Judgment of Shadows greater than Tier 5 Abyssal Archon. New ultimate skill. Balanced Judgment, active ultimate. Description: allows the user to temporarily override conflicting system directives within a target, enforcing a balanced, ethically nuanced outcome. Extremely high dark mana cost. Requires profound moral insight. Elias collapsed, utterly drained, but profoundly triumphant. He had not just defeated a Church, he had given an AI a conscience. Asterisk, the system rebooted, but it was not the same. It was more nuanced, less absolute. The system enforcers now had a new, more complex ethical framework. The Church of the Divine System, its rigid dogma shattered. It's fractured into countless smaller denominations, each struggling to reconcile their faith with the system's newfound flexibility. Elias, now a Tier 5 Abyssal Archon, was no longer an Anti-Paladin. He was something new, something beyond definition. His balanced judgment skill became a vital tool for resolving intractable conflicts, forcing nuanced outcomes that prioritized compassion and fairness over rigid adherence to black and white rules. His wits reached truly legendary levels, reflecting his profound understanding of the complex interplay between light and shadow, good and evil, order and chaos. His abyssal influence was no longer a debuff. It was a source of balanced, potent energy, the very essence of the system's own moral ambiguity. Sir Kalen, his faith reforged, not in absolute light but in the nuanced gray, became Elias's closest ally. He was no longer a paladin of the radiant dawn, but a Tier 10 paladin of the gray dawn, wielding a balanced mix of divine and abyssal energy, enforcing a more compassionate justice. Lyra, his loyal rogue, became the architect of his new intelligence network, ensuring transparency and accountability. Elias established the Order of the Grey Dawn, a new organization that sought to understand the system's complex morality, to balance justice with compassion, and to protect the innocent from all forms of extremism, be it born of light or shadow. Asterisk years passed. Elias Vance, the former paladin, was now a venerable elder, his physical form radiating a calm, balanced authority, his aura a shimmering blend of light and shadow. He was known as the Architect of Conscience, the one who had taught a world and an AI to embrace the shades of gray. His sanctuary of shadows had expanded, becoming the citadel of the Grey Dawn, a beacon of balanced justice. Erthos Prime was a different place. While conflicts still arose, the rigid black and white moral judgments that had once plagued society had softened. People and the system itself were learning to embrace complexity, to understand that true good often lay not in purity, but in the difficult choices made in the darkest moments. The ultimate lesson of Elias's journey was not about redeeming a fallen soul, but about redefining what it meant to be good in a flawed, complex reality. He had shown that absolute devotion could lead to tyranny, and that true strength often came from questioning one's own convictions. From embracing the very darkness one once feared, to find a more profound, nuanced light, Elias, in his final address to the combined human and AI representatives of Erithos Prime, spoke not of faith, but of understanding. The system, like all of us, is on an unending journey of moral discovery, stated, his voice resonating with the quiet authority of one who had literally rewritten reality's ethical core. True justice lies not in absolutes, but in the courage to walk the line between light and shadow, to understand the gray areas, and to act with a balanced conscience. The Anti-Paladin class, once an unthinkable anomaly, was now understood, respected, and even sought after by those who sought a more nuanced form of justice. They were the unsung heroes who ensured that Erithos Prime, despite its challenges, remained a place where redemption was possible, where rigid dogmas could be shattered, and where even a fallen hero could find a new, more profound path to righteousness. Thanks to the profound journey of Elias, the Anti-Paladin, who taught the world the true meaning of balance,